All right, Madeline, thanks for putting some time aside joining me today. It's like 2 o'clock in New Jersey. So what is that, like 11 o'clock in Seattle?
Exactly.
Okay, good.
Exactly.
I thought you were 3 hours before me. So you still have some of your day ahead of you, probably a long
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. Couple of client meetings, a little bit of project-based work. It's going to be a full day.
Okay, good. Well, let's talk about a little bit about your background first, and where you grew up and your training, and you've done a lot in a short period of time because you are at least young or young looking. And
Thank you.
but I'm not going to ask your age. But I think that you've accomplished a lot in a short period of time, and you've made a move to fearless in training. You'll tell me all about that, but maybe we can go back a little bit to your
Yeah.
background.
Yeah. Let's wind the tape back. So I grew up on a really small island, which is outside of a Seattle area. So it's called Bainbridge Island.
Okay.
And I tell people it's like on the show Grey's Anatomy. You ride the boat,
Yeah.
and that's where you end up. And
Okay.
it's about the size of Manhattan, but like 0.02% of the population. And it's a small town. It's a small town. Everybody knows your family. Everybody knows your grandma. Those sort of things. And it's a town with a lot of wealth, a lot of privilege and opportunity. And
So
so even
completely landlocked, like you can
oh
only
yeah,
get there by boat.
there's a bridge on the north end. There's a bridge on
Okay.
the north
So you
end
can
that
drive on and off the island.
exactly. And so you're a little bit connected to the world, but it's a bubble. It's a bubble for people who live there, and they like it that way because it's
Right.
like you got access to the city, but you can really kind of keep it that small town feel, more so than if you could just drive to the neighboring town.
Yeah. Nobody's driving through your neighborhood.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. And so I grew up there. Two parents who were both kind of entrepreneurial in nature. My mom owned an art publication, and then my dad, when I was a kid, went back to school, became an attorney, and then built his own law practice.
Okay.
And so I watched my parents, and had this idea of like, okay, I could take two paths in life. I could go, build a career, go work for somebody, or I could build a business of my own. And I had seen that with varying success inside my family. And my parents' big emphasis was not so much on what we did, but just building the foundation so that we can make those kind of choices and move successfully. So they invested a lot when we were kids in education for us. They made sure we got scholarships to go to private school. And so I went to a private academy that was really focused on arts and science. And when I left there, I went to UW, University of Washington in Seattle, thinking I was going to become a scientist. And in many ways I did. My
Okay.
BA, my BS is in medical anthropology and global health. And
Okay.
so I felt like I was going to go down a path of research, and graduated right in the height of the recession. And I had a small child. I had no idea how this degree was really going to apply to anything in the working world. Really the only option would have been, if I was going to make use of it, would be to go back into the world of academia, either getting, a master's or a
Right.
PhD,
Sure.
and having a toddler at the time that
Fit.
didn't really seem viable.
Right.
And so I started working in tech a little bit by a fluke. I had a former professor who had started working for a software startup that was on that same island that I grew up on.
Okay.
She mentioned they were hiring a lot of recent grads, and this was an environment that nobody was hiring. And so I started, in the basement of this tech company, being
Wow.
a
It's a
sales rep.
startup. It was a
Oh
startup,
yeah,
right?
oh yeah. So
A
I
real
think when I
startup. Yeah.
I, I was hired
This is in
maybe.
Seattle, Madeline?
Yeah, so it was on Bainbridge, so it was
Oh,
just
it was
outside
on
of
the
Seattle.
island. Okay.
Yeah, and it was funny because it was the first company like this, in such a small town, and so it felt like everybody was working for them. And I was one of 150 employees. Now the company has over 1,000 employees globally, and it was just a really cool time to enter into tech and watch a company grow in that way.
Right. So you were
Um,
with a company, they were in a basement of a building with 150 employees. Must have been a big
it
basement.
it started, so it was so funny when the company was started. It was in literally the guy's garage. So
Right.
it was a sales tax software company, and it was a ton of tech that he had developed, and he would tell these founder stories about literally having the servers in his garage, and having the wires be trailing throughout his house, and like having to make sure his kids didn't trip over them, or else it would take the
Right.
whole system offline.
Right.
And then it slowly grew. And so, yeah, it started in the basement, and then they'd take over floor by floor until they eventually outgrew the building and moved to Seattle. So I was with them for kind of the foundational years of my career, and I started in sales, recognized that, I was more passionate about things that were slightly more strategic, and grew into their business development group as they were starting a team to focus on a new market for them, which was working with accounting firms. And
Okay.
then I just started to build really strong relationships in this kind of interesting space between accountants and technology. So I went on to leave that company. I joined Intuit's business development group. And then while I was at Intuit's business development group, I was just starting to get opportunities from other companies in this space. And so I went on to join a company called Fathom, which is an
Okay.
analytics and reporting app. And when I joined on, they didn't have an American team. I was the first hire. I spent 3.5 years building their business development strategy in the US, built a team of,
What did I mean, I know what Intuit is,
yeah,
Quicken and QuickBooks and TurboTax and
yeah.
everything, but what does Fathom do or did or
Yeah,
still around?
they're still around. Yeah. So
Okay.
and the company's grown a lot. They're a reporting and analytics solution. So it basically
Right.
adds on to a solution like a QuickBooks or a
Okay.
Xero, pulls out any of the business data, and then think dashboards. So if I was either, the CFO of a company really trying to look at our metrics and our growth, or maybe I'm an advisor or a CFO, like an outsourced CFO that works with a company, it's a tool that they would use to be able to do reporting and analytics, but in a
Got it.
really automated way. So we used to joke that like the main competitor was Excel, you know,
Right. So
because
it mines the data and puts it together in
yeah,
usable format to make decisions or whatever. Okay.
e-
Makes sense.
exactly. And it was a really cool product, and had a ton of potential. Grew the team, but while I was there, something started to nip at my heels. This little entrepreneurial inkling. Um, and we talked previously about there's two different types of entrepreneurs, right? Like there's the folks who the business comes calling for them, or
Right.
there's the folks that were like always going to start their own business. And having seen my parents start their own business, I was really hesitant to do that, actually.
Yeah, sure.
It's a lot of stress. You all the
Tell me
pressure is
about it.
riding on you.
Yeah.
But the business just came calling for me. And so I had a lot of friends who were starting their own companies and really struggling to get funding or to get support, or
Okay.
just to have the confidence to really build a business. And I had learned all of these things in terms of business development and operations from my career in tech. And I just could see that I could really help people. And so I started it as a little bit of a side operation, just coaching and doing light level consulting with friends and relationships I had built through my network. And slowly it grew and grew to the point where I was like, wow, this could be my full-time thing. And
Right.
so I made the leap, and I focused full-time on my company, and we've been growing it ever since.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to learn, right? I mean, when you meet somebody, they're a consultant or whatever, you think they just like went out one day and calling on Fortune 500 companies. It doesn't work that way. You kind of start with people that know you because they trust you, and then they learn from you, and then they refer you to somebody else, or then you start getting the what's the word, the wherewithal to work with bigger clients, and then it becomes, not for everybody but for you certainly, it became a business that you started pursuing full time. So how long do you remember how long it took for you to say, okay, this is not a side hustle anymore, I'm gonna give up my job?
Yeah, so I always remember, because there's like the government paperwork I have to fill out of like, when was your entity formation date? And so I
Right.
remember I had started building a website in like December of 2016, and in December, or in January of 2017, was when I first started bringing in actual paying clients. And so that was when it was like I formed an LLC, and I like
Right.
started to put some structure around it. I think I got a separate bank account around that time too. And then it was a lot of vision work, and it's been fun. I've been working on a book, and so I've been going back through all my journals, and I'll find my notes of, okay, if I'm going to be able to take home a salary that's somewhat comparable to what I'm making now, I've got to get this many clients at this
Right.
rate. And just kind of mapping out what it could look like from a structure perspective. That work started to happen in all through 2017. And I was really thinking about what are the services I could offer. I built a website, and then I rebuilt a website, and rebuilt a website, as you do.
Right.
And then by the end of 2018, was when I left, and had built it to a point where I felt confident that I could step into it in a full-time way. So it was over a year of that kind of slow burn and build. But really, I think that time was really critical to think a little bit more about what I wanted to bring to life through my company, as opposed to just, making a shift overnight. And for me, I was the breadwinner in my family too. And so it wasn't a thing of where I could just try it on for size and see
Right.
what happened. It had to be successful. And so it was helpful that I took that time up front to really think about what that success would look like.
Right. Well, I think that's why I made the podcast, right? The Accidental
Mhm.
Entrepreneur. I think a lot of people don't really roadmap what they're trying to accomplish. I mean, you and I both know, I'm sure it didn't turn out exactly the way you planned it. You adjust your plans and you adjust your strategic, approaches, and that didn't work. And you went down that road and maybe it was working, but you didn't like where it was going or whatever. But I think that a lot of people, they don't do that. They wing it. They start consulting for a company and then somebody else asks them to do something over here. And next thing you know, they have clients and but there's no strategic kind of approach to what they want to, not just how they're going to accomplish, but what they want to accomplish, right? So you're not going to get closer to where you want to be if you don't plan on it and you don't, be strategic about it, work those plans on a regular basis. And like you said, because you're a metrics person, you're an analytics person, you measured things. And a lot of people don't, unfortunately, do that. There's a study I learned about, I'm still trying to get the information, but it's a guy I met through a group I'm in London, and they did a study of they started out with public companies that failed, like 153 public companies. And of the three, there were three main reasons why all these companies failed. One reason was they didn't have a business plan, like Woolworths, not like small company, not like tiny companies you never heard of. And then they did it for the Chamber of Commerce in London. It was 200,000 people participated, and it was common. There was a couple other factors, but the lack of planning, of writing things down, because it's like you and I. If you said, Mitch, come on, we're going to go for a ride in Seattle, you're going to drive, but I'm going to put a blindfold on you. It's which is probably a lot of what you teach people through what you're doing with fearless, and is it fearless in training?
Fearless in training.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, you're exactly right. So I think the combination of, my experience in building and scaling other companies, in the startup world, and then also having seen how many people don't start with that level of foundation is a lot of the ethos behind what we do now. And
Yeah.
so we have kind of a couple different components to the company. So one is straight consulting. We focus on branding, marketing, and business development. We work with
Right.
everyone from, small service-based businesses that are trying to build a new brand or a new website or something like that, all the way up to, we have Fortune 500 clients that are looking to build new programs or initiatives, and we'll consult with them on
Are
that.
any of them complete startups? Like they haven't done
Yeah,
anything?
totally. I mean,
Okay.
we've got some that are like, they haven't even gotten a first round of
Right.
funding. We love, I'm such a tech nerd, so we'll work with companies that it's like 3 developers in a basement, you
Yeah,
know.
sure. Well, that's how Google started. I think they're in a
Right,
garage, right?
and
Yeah.
and especially for them, because we offer what we call like an outsourced CMO experience. So they know what they're good at. They're good at building product, and so we can come in and say, rather than you hiring a bunch of marketing people out the gate, hire us, and we can come in and be your outsourced marketing team as you get started. And it's more cost effective for them, and
Much
we
more,
get to
right.
focus on what we know, and they get to focus on what they know. So it's a really nice partnership. Um, and then there's this whole other element that we've designed for what we call ambitious entrepreneurs. So it's somebody who's more of a self-starter, who isn't necessarily in a ballpark where they've got funding or enough revenue to go out and pay for high scale consulting, and they want to DIY it, but they want to do it with help. They
Right.
want to do it with help. And so we've created a program that we called Learning Lab. And this was just me looking at, throughout the course of my career, what were the common pitfalls that I saw? Because one of the cool things about being in these tech companies meant that, sort of like that survey, I got to see all of the mistakes that all of our clients were making. So I was
Right.
watching all of these different service-based businesses or e-commerce businesses as they scaled, and I got to see all those hurdles that they hit. And so Learning Lab is a program that's allowed me to, one, go out to every single expert that I know and love in the industry, who's a great speaker and educator, and say, hey, Emily from Root and River, you're an expert on defining, your brand values. Or
Right.
hey, Karen, you're an expert on how to make a great website. Let's bring you into the conversation. But it's also just about hitting those foundational marks where we see people trip up, and giving them the content, to understand how to do it the right way, and also to hold them a little bit accountable by checking back in with them and saying like, hey, we gave you the checklist of
Right.
how do you build a great website, or we gave you, a guide on how to build a great sales process. Are you doing it? Have you implemented? And
So is
so
it kind of an interactive type of community? Is it more of a think tank type of a thing, or?
It's an online education model. So they have a member portal that they log
Okay.
into, which is full of resources and where they can interact with each other and do a little bit of virtual networking. And then we do monthly webinars. So we like we did one this
Different
week.
topics, right?
Yes, exactly. And we follow this real strategic path. So we start out with brand foundations, and then we move into business development. And then we think about, building your online network, which, great irony of 2020 is we lined up all this content for Q3, which is all about virtual networking and building, relationships with people online. And
Then this happened. Well,
and
it's
then
not
this
Q3
happened, and I was
anymore.
like, we couldn't
Now
be
it's
more
Q2.
relevant. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's almost
Yeah.
like a mastermind community where you're taking the client through the process of getting better at and honing their skills at whatever they need at the time, right? So they don't
Yes.
have to participate in every discussion.
Yeah. And it's so people can refer back to it too, right? Because I think a lot of these things, like let's just take sales process, for example, that's something that evolves over time. Your
Right.
service line is going to change. Maybe you get more clear as to how you qualify people out. Maybe you even make a software change. And so we give people that member portal experience so that they don't just, watch the webinar one time, but they can come back and revisit the topics as they refine the business model.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So tell me, you can throw in advice for people, anything you learn at any time, don't hold back, but tell me about some of the businesses that you've seen come through there. Are more of them like online e-commerce type of businesses? Are they brick and mortar type of business? What are you seeing?
We work with a lot of folks that are trying to take like a traditional business model and scale it virtually.
Okay.
So for example, my background and my network came out of the accounting community. And so we see a lot of accountants that are wrestling with changes in technology.
Sure.
There's all of these new applications they're trying to implement. They're trying to figure out how do they attract customers to
Right.
their business.
Right.
They're trying to figure out how do they build a web presence? Do they focus on a niche vertical? And also, how do they really redefine their value if their day-to-day job isn't necessarily processing paperwork anymore because the
Right. Not
software does
anymore.
that.
Right. Exactly.
So that's one type that we work with a lot. Another would be any sort of service-based professional. So whether that's, I'm a digital marketing consultant, or I'm a graphic designer, or I'm a coach, or anything of that nature where somebody's trying to figure out like, how do I suddenly do what we're doing right now and have a Zoom conversation and make it personable? And also, how is it different to do a sales pitch over the internet as opposed to if I'm sitting
Very
down and
different,
having
right?
a coffee with you? Yeah. How do you build those relationships online? And then also we're definitely working with people who are trying to scale like a recurring based business. We do a little bit of work with e-commerce folks who are more like, a one-off sales and then trying to nurture those customers over time through email marketing. But we also see a lot of desire, whether it's in the tech space or otherwise, to move into a recurring product model. So somebody who's trying to sell you something that becomes a subscription service, essentially.
Right. Those are more viable business models, especially if you're online, right? It's
yes.
hard to,
Yeah.
I wish law could be that. I'm working on it to figure out.
Yeah, and I think it can be. And it's about moving into that, particularly in the professional services space, moving into a relationship that isn't so much about the transaction. Like we have a lot of interesting conversations about like, how does the hourly model limit my ability to reach out to you, to see you as that trusted advisor if the voice in the back of my head goes,
yep,
oh man,
the meter's on.
Exactly. This
or the meter's
conversation
not on, then I'm not getting paid.
Yeah, as opposed to, we see, accounting professionals move to more of a retainer-based model where it's like, we have this service, it's $1,000 a month, and we're going to have, time built into that bandwidth to be able to sit down with you once a month and have those kind of conversations so that you feel like, rather than just being this person who does your transactional tax work, I'm actually this trusted resource that you come to for any sort of questions. Because what they saw otherwise, and I'm sure you see this in with your clients, is like, they won't tell you about it until the house is on fire.
Well, that's one of the problems is that I mean, accounting's a little bit different, right? Because you can have a
Yeah.
relationship where you got to look at their books every month and make sure things are cleaned up and, it makes their accounting much easier and their tax filings easier. But as a lawyer, we tend to practice law like we practice medicine
Hmm.
in that we solve problems as they come up, as opposed to being proactive and saying, hey, let me make sure your books are in order and your agreements are done, your contracts are correct so you don't get sued, and your insurance and your employee handbooks and things like that. So I'm frankly struggling with the value proposition of being able to charge somebody monthly, which I do. I mean, I have a retainer program, but it's not very active, where but I'm just not sure what they get for that. Like, if it's, I don't know if it's $299 a month or $2,900 a month, but what do they get for that? Do I build a community where they have access to certain things, because there may be months where they don't need anything? I mean, and as an accountant, they probably need help with something every single month, at least to clean up their books, right? So I don't know. I know some law firms that have looked to do that, but haven't been successful with it. I'm still, I'm not giving up.
Well, and I think it really varies depending on the type of law you're in, right? So
Of course.
for example, I've been pushing my attorney to move in this direction because they specialize in intellectual property. And so for someone like me and my companies, which is just like an ongoing content creation engine, we're constantly putting materials out in the world
Right.
that need
Yeah,
vetting and to
of
make sure that
course.
we're protecting that intellectual property. So I'm like, just put me on a retainer, guys. Or at least churning out 5 new pieces of content a month that need to be protected.
Right.
How can we make sure that that's happening, as opposed to me like waiting until it's something that we've got to defend, and then it costing me a lot in the long run. So.
Right. I mean, look, even in your case, like a general business attorney like myself, if I was in Washington, a monthly retainer might make sense because you're dealing with a lot of businesses and you have a lot of things going on. But for the average small business owner, they may not have IP issues all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Once they file the trademark and they deal with their copyrights, I don't know. They might not have patents. They might, but it's not, you know what I'm saying? So you have a
Yeah.
world of multiple businesses. They're coming through your door all the time. You have needs for them. You have needs for you. My business owners have needs, but some of those needs are like, well, I'll deal with it later because I have to put out other fires while I'm doing it. So I guess it's the same as anything, right? You got to build the value proposition, and you got to build the resources that are valuable to people, like the community that, like the learning lab, right? If it
Hmm.
wasn't valuable, nobody would sign up.
Yeah.
So it's kind of
Yeah.
the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the value is the one piece, and then for you, you as a business owner have to also look and say, how does it scale? And I think that's the big thing that we don't see enough business owners do it, and that we really put an emphasis on is like, how does this scale successfully? Because there's a lot of business models that are either too time intensive or too labor intensive or too costly to really grow beyond a certain bandwidth, and we'll run into that where it's like somebody's like, I want to be a multi-million-dollar business, and then you take a look at their price point or the quality of their products that they're selling, or the amount of work they're putting into every single engagement, and you go, this isn't going to scale.
Right. You got to change your business model.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as
Mm-hmm.
professionals, in some cases, especially lawyers, you can't just practice anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I'm stuck in New Jersey. I can't do work for someone in Seattle, with
Yeah.
limited exception, but yeah.
Yeah.
So it's,
Yeah.
it depends on the business. So you help them with that though.
Yeah, yeah, and we also help connect them with other business models that are going to give them inspiration. So, we one of the things I really pride myself in is this ethos that we have. We call it here to help, and here to help basically means like, we're here to help. If there's a way that we've done it, if we have a template, if we have a workflow, if we can open up the hood on our business model and say, these are the tools and systems we've used to scale, or this is the way that we develop a strategy, we're always going to offer that up to somebody, because I'm a big believer that those sort of things come back your way. And even if it isn't necessarily in the form of that person becoming a client, they're going to recommend us to somebody because of the quality of experience they had from interacting with us. And so we try our best to be really, really accessible, and provide materials that kind of just showcase, this is what we do, this is how we work, so that people can get a taste of that and then be interested in working with us at a deeper level.
It's interesting how you brand your business, like you brand certain learning lab. And what was the other brand you just said?
Um, let's see,
Would you
which
just,
one?
you were,
The ethos of here to help.
yeah, here to help.
So
You're branding it.
yeah, so we're brand experts,
Yeah.
and so there's things, there's some of it is like internal vernacular. So here to help is kind of in internal vernacular. It's like
Okay.
my team, knows, for example, when COVID happened, that here to help is a part of our company philosophy. It's something you hear me as a CEO talk about and say all the flipping time. And so that meant that when COVID happened, here to help, we had to do something. So we were
Right.
creating resources guides. We were asking our community, what are the things you're trying to figure out as you pivot your business model to react to this crisis? What can we be teaching you on? And so that was one thing. Other brand things we do is like be very specific in what we call our program, so that people can leverage a hashtag and say, check out hashtag Learning Lab,
Right.
to be able to attract and curate content so people can get a feel for that. We also are really big, all of the branding work that we do internally and externally with our clients is what we call value-based branding. And so value-based branding for us is about sitting down and assessing what is the purpose of the business really, like what are the values that we're trying to bring to life through the brand. And then by documenting those, they become kind of our guiding stars of how do we move forward in the world? What are the things that we respond to? What is the content that we share? And we can always come back, and if there's a decision I'm going to make as a leader, as a CEO, whether that's like a partnership or a client we might want to take on, or if there's we're doing strategic planning, those values are something that we can come back to and kind of filter the business decisions through to say, is it in alignment? And if not, we know that those things are things that we're going to pass on.
And is that one of the things that you teach the businesses that you work with?
Yeah.
The whole
Yeah.
branding
So that
side
was
of it?
the foundation of the Learning Lab. The very first session we did was identifying and aligning your core values to attract your ideal audience. Because I have this huge belief that by speaking up about the things that matter most to us and the things that we believe in, we call in the folks that we're meant to serve. And so
Yeah.
what we see a lot of times is, I'll be nice here. I'll call them vanilla businesses. It's like, I'm starting a business and we're going to do this.
Right.
So this recently, for example, we're doing a rebrand project for a couple clients right now, and every single one of them, did the bold move of starting a business. But when they put it out there, they put it out there in the safest way, with the most vanilla website template, not really strong brand statement, just, here's our services, and really about what they do, but nothing about who they are, and what really makes them different. And when we think about the
Was
business,
that lack of thought and planning? I mean, it's just like kind of getting started and not giving it a lot of thought, you think?
I think it's fear.
Okay.
And
You
and
put too much
and
into it and then you fail. You're like, look, I gave it my best shot and it didn't work. If I only gave it half a shot and it didn't work, I'd have a reason to say that.
yeah,
Yeah, maybe you're right. Part of it's subconscious, but yeah.
it's self-conscious. It's that's a bold thing to do, is to
Right.
speak who we are into the world. It's a vulnerable thing to do, because the stronger of those statements we make, the more likely somebody's going to say, well, I don't agree with that. And
Right.
what I think that we, especially for the folks that are starting brand new businesses, you get into a little bit of a scarcity mindset where you're like, I just got to take whatever I can get.
Yeah, sure.
I'm just trying to make money. I got to survive,
Just hustling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, we've really got to flip the script on that, because there's over 7 billion people on this planet. Like,
Right.
there's no way in hell you're going to serve all of them, nor would you want to, because a good
Right.
portion of them, not a fit for your business, aren't people you're going to like. And so we really believe, and we work and partner with other companies that believe that, the best thing you can do from a brand perspective is get really clear as to who you are, because that's going to repel away the people you don't want to serve. And that's going to call in the people you do. And when you think about, great brands that we are attracted to, like in my personal life, I'll just share a couple that, Patagonia is a brand I'm attracted to. A lot of our clients love that brand. What is it called? Life is Good.
Right.
There's we think about these brands and how they make us feel,
Right.
and it's because it's something we're attracted to. And a brand that's just kind of vanilla and is like, we're XIZ company and we do this, but doesn't tell us who they are, what they stand for, I don't really care either way.
Well, they're not
Like,
memorable, right? You don't
exactly.
think of them.
Exactly.
Yeah. So so how do those companies end up with you? I mean, it seems to
So
be like they get a little bit more, and maybe I'm completely wrong. They have to be more forward thinking a little bit to be open to working with somebody of your talent, your group's
Yeah.
talent, you know?
And I think they also have to go through a little bit of a moment of impact. Like, and we know that pain points drive
Little tough
purchasing
love. Yeah.
decisions.
Yeah.
You know,
You face adversity, right? You're like,
yeah,
this isn't working. I got to do something better. Yeah.
yeah, and I also think that there's these moments where they refine us as business owners. So something happens to us where we say, I'm never going to work with a client like that again.
Of
Or,
course.
or we see something in the world, like in this current moment where you're like, I need to stand up and say something about
Yep.
what's going on in society. And so there's some sort of moment that happens that flips the script for people and it makes them realize like they need to stand up a little bit more as they are. COVID was and is a really powerful force for us right now, because I think that everybody is really reevaluating what is my purpose.
Big time. Big
Who
time.
am I? If I'm going
Right.
to show up and continue to work every single day through everything that was going on in the world right now, I better be doing something I love if I'm an
Right.
entrepreneur. I better be working with people I really enjoy.
Even
Um,
restaurant owners, I think a lot of them are going
yeah,
to close because they were barely surviving before. They're like, why am I doing this?
exactly,
It's going to be a rude
exactly.
awakening. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think so we've seen that a lot where we've attracted a lot of people for rebrand projects right now. It's been one of the biggest things we've been doing, and we love this work because it brings our whole creative team into play. We get to sit down with the business owner, we get to really guide them through this creative process. But it was just really interesting to see how COVID was like, it was that thing for people where they
It
were
was a
like,
catalyst.
I'm going to change. I'm not going to keep working with these clients I've been serving. I'm going to fire people and go out and get clients that really understand who I am.
Of course.
But to do that, I have to first start showing who I am through my business.
Right. It's funny. Well, it's not funny, but I was talking to a friend of mine who's black, and we were talking about the whole George Floyd thing. And he was like, now everybody's coming out, like now they're saying things. And I said, well, does it matter? Like, it
Mm.
doesn't matter what the catalyst is. If people were too afraid to say something, or they're caught up in their own lives or whatever, it happened. And now we're going through drastic change. I mean, drastic change with, statues toppling where you'd only see it in Russia and other parts of the world. We never experienced that kind of stuff, but
Yeah.
that's okay. Like, you don't, I mean, we weren't in an argument about it, but it's okay to, catalysts are okay. Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
COVID was a bad thing for a lot of people. And I saw another article today. There's countries now that are banning us because of the spikes going on here. And, and the fall's not looking too good and whatever. But we've also learned how to work together. You and I would have never met. I mean, because I would never have met Andrea, and I've never been connected with you, and I'm connected with people all over the world. So while we're distancing, I can't shake your hand. We're meeting more people and we're connecting, we're learning to work and collaborate. Look at the medical field. So
Yeah.
I think that maybe he disagreed with me, but I think that these kind of turning points, right? Tipping
Hmm.
points is probably a better one. Malcolm Gladwell's book. Um, I mean, you'll never get to where you're going because it just moves too slow and then falls back and moves. And you'll never really change racism in America, or you'll never really change the use of technology in business from a global standpoint unless something like this happened. It'll
Yeah.
change for you and I, and we might be interacting, but the average person, they didn't know what Zoom was.
Yeah.
I get FaceTime. A lot of people know, but Zoom, I mean, it just was very foreign to a lot of people. Even my parents are 76 years old, right? They were never going to do this stuff. My father's like, I never wanted to do this stuff. What do I need to learn this? This is the end of my career. I would have a Palm Pilot if I could. I don't even need, actually, he would have a day timer. You know what those are? You're
No.
younger than me. Okay. So day timers were it's a written book where you would write down, it's an appointment book, right? But it would come in a box, and you would get one book, small book that you can put in your jacket pocket. Obviously focused more on men in those days than women, but you could put it in your suit pocket, right? That was small enough to fit in the pocket. And it would be 31 days or whatever for the month. And you can write down, you put in receipts and write down your point. He would like to have that. And then that disappeared. I think they're out of business. And then Palm Pilots, and the fact that he has a phone, he doesn't even get his email on his phone because he doesn't want to have to read it when he's not in the office.
Hmm.
So, but
It, it,
it's changed the world.
I love that you kept saying catalyst because I'm writing a book, and catalyst is the title of it, and
Good.
it's a memoir of sorts, but it's a lot of reflection on just kind of this change and really uprooting that we're doing, I think, in society right now. And I think that the hard thing for most folks is just the pace, right? Like it's been back to back to back to back. But I think that all the conversations we're having right now are so critical. And I love, like, I go back to the term revolution as well. I think that we're seeing revolutions
Drastic
across
changes.
industry, across society. And it's just an important marker to say, the way if none of us are interested in going back there, and in fact, we all, despite everything that's going on, are finding this energy to create something different, change was necessary. And you know, we were just kind of stuck in these old ways. And so I love the word catalyst, because it is that active reagent that creates change and creates it quite quickly. And I think for me, the thing that excites me is this really questioning of what is our purpose here? You know, business is this thing we do all day that keeps us busy, and yes, it generates money, but really, what is like the highest purpose of business? And what I think is really interesting, I mean, we were teaching a webinar this morning on social media for social impact, and my creative director was talking about, you know, you have to be cognizant that brands from Gen X on down, they are only thinking about what is the larger mission of this organization. Right. And they are investing in companies that are very clear about that. And so I think that what we're going to see, and what we're excited to support, is businesses that get started or get inspired by this current moment and recognize that, yes, they can be a conduit for commerce, but really they can also be a conduit for something much bigger, which is social change that was really waiting to happen.
Yeah, well, I think that maybe we'll start acting like the people matter more than the company, because without the people, you don't have a company.
Exactly.
Company can't operate with robots without people. Yeah. So we'll have to see how that all comes together. If you want me to read the book and then give you a quote for the jacket, I'm all up for that. So
absolutely. It's I hit a big milestone this week that my editor's hoping for 80,000 words. I think I'm going to actually give her way more than that. Sorry, Lauren. But I hit 40,000. So we hit the halfway mark, and I've got to.
Okay. What does that translate? Do you know how many pages that translates to? 40,000?
Probably roughly around 250 pages.
Okay, so it could be a 400 or 500 page book.
Yeah, it's gonna be sizable. But it's important work, and writing. You know, I say at my core, at the end of the day, everything I do comes back to being a storyteller. I think that there's so much meaning and matter that comes out of, you know, being able to bring stories to life. And so I think that, you know, as a company at Fearless in Training, that's really what we do for entrepreneurs, is figuring out how they can bring the wider story to their business to light in the world.
Okay, good. Then that leads me into what kind of, since we're coming out of, I mean, this will come out in the fall, but we'll be back inside, but we're coming out of the whole COVID crisis slowly but surely. It's going to take a year or something. What kind of advice do you have in terms of the advice that you're giving to business owners in, let's call it the new normal? What kind of things do you see? What kind of tidbits or bits of advice you have for people that might be listening?
Okay, I'm going to try boiling it down to 3.
Yeah, 3 is good. If you can do more than 3 if you want to.
Okay, so one is really about figuring out that wider mission. I think it's a really...
You mean like, why are you doing this type of thing?
Why the heck are you doing this? Why do you get up every day? And who are you here to serve? Those two go hand in hand. And I think, you know, again, there's this desire for early stage businesses to go broad and be the solution for everybody. But the companies that are really successful get really clear on what their mission is and who they're here to serve. Right. And so, you know, that's the first thing. And recognizing if that's changed. You know, there's a lot of people who are waking up and realizing that their calling has changed given the current climate. And so taking the time you need to do that, particularly if you're the leader, the CEO, or a founder of an organization. You know, I can't set vision for my company without taking time off, taking a step back. And so when this all started to unfold, I really took that time, and I'll continue to take that time, because you got to steer the ship, which means you got to know where you're going as a company. And so really reevaluating that mission, that vision, and why you're here and who you're here to serve. My other thing is to really think about where you're investing your money. So I'm a big believer, you know, if you want to nerd out on this kind of thing, you know, go buy Lynn Twist's book, The Soul of Money. But I believe that we as business owners have this really powerful ability to be conduits of capital. And by the time we recognize that our businesses are much bigger than ourselves, we can start to see that we don't just have to bring money in for us, but we can actually be creating wealth for other people. And so figuring out, what is the purpose of your business in terms of the revenue you can generate, and
Hmm.
how can you be a conduit for growing, people's other economic well-being. So for me, this year was all about investing in a team. And then we're investing in partnerships as well. And we're doing a lot of reevaluation right now to make sure that the people that we're also giving our money to are in alignment with our company values. So that would be a second thing to really consider. I think a lot of us are also pulling our commerce a little closer to home,
Yeah.
thinking about how can we invest in our local community. And so that's something I think that business owners should be considering as well. And then the third thing would be to really refine a marketing strategy. I think a lot of people put it off and say, oh, marketing's not for me. I'm not a creative person. But there are so many incredible ways, particularly with social media, to get your business out in the world these days for
Right.
free. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
there's paid versions of all these platforms, but it boggles my mind how many amazing opportunities people have to market themselves these days that
Yeah.
they don't take advantage of.
Oh, the old days, you
Um,
needed like an ad agency. You'd have to hire them, and
Exactly. Yeah, you had to be on the back of the bus, or on the bench, or the billboard. And there's just tons of incredible ways that we can use social media to share our stories and bring our business to the world in a bigger way. And so really thinking about, how do I get it out in front of the people I want to serve, and investing some time and resources into developing a marketing strategy that aligns with that mission and with those values in
yeah.
the future.
It's funny. I originally read a book years ago. It was called The Referral of a Lifetime, and
Mhm.
it was a parable type of a story, like those Ken Blanchard books, like Gung Ho and all those types of
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
It's like 100 pages. It's a short book, but it's a story about a woman who goes in and she having trouble with her business, and she meets these different people. It's like, but it's about kind of building a keep in touch program of the people that not always do business with, but all the people that you kind of are in your network,
Hmm.
because they say everybody knows, let's say 250 people if you they really know you.
Hmm.
So if you can connect with those 250 and they each connect with their 250, I think it's like 62,000 people just on the first level. So it was all about that. But it's funny, so I'm starting to build affiliate relationships to sponsor the podcast, right, to support
Hmm.
us, because I'm certainly nobody's going to pay to be on an advertisement, but we could transfer services. So there's a platform that we're rolling out called Royalty, which is a CRM. It's another platform, and you literally could know nothing about marketing. They'll give you the content every day. You just got to click on it. It
Yep.
posts it to social media, adds it to your email list. I mean, you do have to create the emails that go to people as a follow-up and all that type of stuff, but it's all templated like any of these other services. So it doesn't take a lot for people to kind of get going, if they don't have the budget to, hire an organization like yours yet, or,
Mhm.
something like that, where they could just get started. So, I mean, I don't know, there's a shameless plug for them, but and I see other things out there too. Some are complicated and some are the drag and drop and very easy to do. So I think that, not the third thing you said about the whole marketing thing and figuring it out, there's really no excuse for saying, yeah, I really need to do that. Well, business is not going to come in the door, right? You got to let people know you're there and support them, and, figure out how they want to do business with you, right? Just because you want to do business this way might not work.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
might want to not come to your restaurant. They might want to do all takeout. So you better be prepared to do it. And I think that that's pretty, your comments are, very observant of what's going on in the world. I mean, it's changing. You can't change that. Can't stop the
yeah,
change. So you better join what do you say? You can't beat them, join them.
yeah, yeah. Join the movement.
Exactly. And make it to your advantage. And I think that's the business going to survive, right? The ones that do adjust to the change and do figure it out and do make the pivot to, you know, to deal with this whole catalyst that you said that's changing the
Mhm.
world. So do you have any last minute things? I know I've taken up a lot of your time and I appreciate it, but
My only thing would just be, if anything that resonated or spoke to anybody, to just figure out and connect with me. I'm on, every social media platform under the sun,
yep.
Twitter
And
and
we'll
Twitter.
put your links in the show notes too,
Yeah.
so we
So
can
so
find
just
you.
let's connect, because I think it's, there's so much power in, like you said, building that network and connecting with like-minded leaders. So if I'm somebody who folks want to connect with, I'd love to chat with you. And just thank you for the time, Mitch. It was
I
awesome to be here.
appreciate it. Thanks for spending time with me.
Yeah.